All right, let's get to it, ladies and gentlemen. Who here knows what the fake news is? I think that you must know unless you've been living under a rock. Of course, I'm referring to certain actors that work within the realm of mainstream media, and most definitely since the inception of this corona situation, we've seen no hesitation whatsoever from certain actors within the mainstream media to belittle and to undermine the attempts of people who ask questions in relation to corona. We've of course seen a horrific smear campaign of the heroic protesters of Melbourne, often referred to as violent and hostile or, quote, anti-vaxxers. And, I'm still trying to work out exactly what this term anti-vaxxer is. You see, the problem that we're experiencing from the mainstream media is that you have these so-called journalists making these slanderous remarks about people who are protesting, yet without actually getting on the ground themselves and making any effort to speak to the people who are actually out on the ground holding banners, with very, very few exceptions, okay? And we see these horrible terms, and we've also seen terms such as far right or neo-Nazi. But of course, the main term is anti-vaxxer. Now, this term particularly gets under my skin for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's simply not true. I can tell you from 18 months meeting hundreds of people, probably thousands of people now in my experience out on the street since the inception of this corona situation, is that there are very few people out there who are legitimately against vaccines. The very vast majority of people out on the street protesting, they're simply saying that people should have the right to choose whether or not they want to take a vaccine, and that nobody should be punished should they choose not to take part in what the Federal Health Minister Greg Hunt referred to as the world's largest clinical trial. That is simply all they're saying. Nobody wants to control somebody else or tell somebody what they can and can't do. Yet this term anti-vaxxer has been manufactured by the mainstream media and used to smear people who are simply exercising their democratic rights. Now, this term anti-vaxxer, it has been engineered by the mainstream media to become synonymous with terms such as crazy person or selfish person or somebody that denies science, somebody that is a pest to society. And we see this term anti-vaxxer adopted by all sorts of people, celebrities, politicians, and unfortunately we see civilians turning on civilians and using that particular term. That selfish anti-vaxxer over there, keep him away from me. Those anti-vaxxers, they are the reason for the economic demise of our country. So if you want to get angry at somebody, get angry at them. It's a complete division campaign, and it's actually working. At a protest a little bit over a month ago, there was a huge crowd in Melbourne, thousands of people walking through the streets. And as they did so, there were residents in the high-rise buildings in Melbourne that opened their windows and threw unidentified liquids down onto the protesters. Somebody told me they were hit with what felt like boiling water. So it just goes to show that this tremendous division campaign, this scapegoating campaign, propagated by the mainstream media, egged on by the politicians, is manifesting on the streets in the form of violence, and it's absolutely disgraceful. Now, I'm going to take you through a couple of articles here. The first few are in relation to what happened with Monica. Of course, Monica courageously, as you know, declined to sign those anti-democratic bail conditions and ended up spending 22 days behind bars. And even so, even in that moment, we saw such vitriol from the mainstream media, kicking somebody when they're down. I'm going to show you, and I'm going to take you through some examples right here, because I feel that it's important to identify, and as the saying goes, if you see something wrong, call it out. And when the mainstream media, with all of their institutional power, hiding behind the corporations, when they punch down at citizens, I feel that it's our right to say something, because it's simply unfair. At the end of the day, this is Australia, and I dare say that bullying other people is not part of our culture, and it's something that I think is a tradition to call out. So let's get started. Let me show you a couple of examples right here. All right, so we have somebody here by the name of Samantha Maiden. Okay, so this is taking you back to when Monica was initially intercepted and arrested. Using the term anti-vaxxer, you and I, as I just mentioned before, anti-vaxxer, a slanderous term, synonymous with selfish person that doesn't care about the greater good of society, a science denier. That's the sort of context of the term anti-vaxxer. And here below, you see the term reality TV wannabe. So just a term that's really used to try and belittle, a term that's used to try and undermine, and quite frankly, just a completely childish term to refer to somebody as. So let's just move along here. Okay, so this is that particular person right there from the article. Samantha Maiden, so-called political editor, feels the use to use immature language. It really boggles the brain, doesn't it? All right, so here's another example of some slander right here. Look at this. Anti-vax leader. So again, they love using this term anti-vax, just painting people with the stroke of a brush. And by the way, there are certain people out there that are staunchly against vaccines. And what do I have to say about those people? I have to say, so what? So what? Who cares? If somebody wants to be against vaccines, let them be against vaccines. There's other people out there that are against Panadol. Let them be against Panadol. There's other people out there that are against sausage sizzles. Let them be against sausage sizzles. But of course, the term anti-vax has been used here incorrectly, because we're all about free choice and allowing people to make their own decisions. But anyway, I digress. Look at this. An article here written by a guy called Jack Painter and Caroline Schnell. Anti-vax leader Monica made $50K a day in custody. All right, so by using the term here made, they're almost implying that this is money that she made that she's put in her pocket, whereas it was very clearly public information that the funds were for legal defense. So by using this term, it could very well lead people to draw the conclusion that this is all just one big sham and that the money is just going in somebody's pocket. I mean, the term made, think about it, right? So how much did you make at work today? Well, I made $200. This is just just completely dishonest reporting here. And here we see this term again. Look at this. Reality TV wannabe turned anti-vaxxers. So it seems like there's a big pile on. We got it we got it spoken here by Samantha. And then we've got Jack Painter and Caroline Schnell jumping on the bandwagon, who have probably agreed that, hey, this is a funny thing to say. This is a great way to belittle someone. Reality TV wannabe. And here we go. There you go, Caroline Schnell using that term again, former wannabe reality TV. It's just absolutely disgraceful, isn't it? Just the extent to which these people in the mainstream media will go and kick somebody when they're down. And Jack Painter, again another article. But look, this is actually quite pathetic. Have a look at this. Announces engagement after release from jail. How is getting engaged newsworthy, ladies and gentlemen? This just shows you the utterly disgraceful, sad state of affairs in Australian mainstream media. I'd hardly think that someone getting engaged is newsworthy, but I guess that just goes to show the sort of journalistic standards that we have in this country. All right, so let's have a look at these people. Who are they? Here we go, Jack Painter. I'm sure that he feels very proud about himself, using his platform with news.com.au to pick on members of the public and to do so in a very belittling manner. So supposedly he's a crime reporter. So, well, if you're a crime reporter, Jack, how about you start reporting on some of the crimes committed by Victoria Police and stop picking on your fellow citizens? Oh, I guess that might take a little bit of courage, so I might be asking a bit too much. And here's this person, Caroline Schnell, just another example here. So she covers courts, crime and breaking news, yet she likes to use immature language such as TV star, reality star, wannabe, that sort of thing. Again, a very sad reflection on the type of characters that we have working in the mainstream media here in Australia. And that's why it should really be no surprise to anyone that people are leaving the mainstream media in droves and turning to alternative independent media such as Rebel News, such as the MCJ report. All right, so we have someone here, let's see, a journalist for the Herald Sun, Olivia Jenkins, using the term hostile. That's right, look at this. Officers placed a hostile marched under arrest. Okay, that doesn't make much sense to me. Let's go to another post. Police swarm and detain a, quote, hostile couple. Well, Olivia, how do you know that they were hostile? How much time did you spend on the ground speaking to those people before you decided that they are, quote, hostile? Did you spend any time speaking to them whatsoever? Or did you just decide that you happen to know everything? I'll tell you what looks hostile to me, seeing these people swarmed by several police officers, held on the ground, and essentially abused for doing what? Exercising what should only be their democratic right. So, yeah, just again, you see somebody that has the backing of a corporation using this type of defamatory language against civilians. And that takes no courage. Let me tell you that, ladies and gentlemen, it takes absolutely no courage. What we see from the mainstream media, we see all these characters coming out and attacking people that are doing it hard, people that have lost their income during lockdowns, people whose lives have been absolutely destroyed by the government. And then on top of that, they have to deal with these defamatory remarks from the mainstream media. I mean, what this reminds me of is you got the schoolyard, right? You got 10 kids beating up one kid, and then another kid comes along and starts kicking the kid that's on the bottom. Takes absolutely no guts, and for somebody to stand up and be strong is something very special. And unfortunately, we don't see a great deal of that in the mainstream media, do we? All right, so moving along here to the conversation. Look at this. Anti-vaxxers, conspiracy theorists, and the far right, quote, came together over COVID. All right, so this is a crazy statement, and one that is utterly baseless and devoid of any evidence whatsoever, written by a guy called Josh Roos, who is a senior research fellow at Deakin University. Well, my question for you, Josh, is how much on-the-ground research have you done at these protests before coming up with these words such as anti-vaxxer or conspiracy theorist or far right? Have you spoken to anybody on the ground, or have you simply conducted in your research from academia and decided that you know better than anyone else without actually having a real conversation with a real person? So have a look at this guy. Look at this. It says here, far right I can't, it's hard to say this with a straight face, but he says far right nationalists, anti-vaxxers, whatever anti-vaxxers are, libertarians, all right, well, there's definitely libertarians out there, all right, there you go, you got one right, and conspiracy theorists, all right, have come together over COVID and capitalized on the anger and uncertainty simmering in some sections of the community. Well, Josh, have you ever stopped to think that maybe these people, it's not about coming together, but simply expressing their opposition to government policy, expressing their opposition to lockdowns that many could argue and do argue are non-evidence-based, measures that many argue are pseudoscience and cause far too much destruction and are disproportionate, okay? We see a mental health crisis in children. Many people out on the streets are protesting because they don't want the next generation to be left with damage that will last an entire generation or perhaps longer. Small businesses closed down for what? For what? These little corner stores shut down whilst huge hordes of people can make their way through Dan Murphy's. I mean, but according to this senior research fellow, they're far-right nationalists and they're conspiracy theorists. Well, tell you what, Josh, I don't care how many letters you have after your name, unless you get there on the ground and have discussions with the people who are protesting, your opinion, regardless of all your degrees, I don't care if you have a PhD, your opinion is absolutely invalid. That's right, it's completely invalid. I don't care what piece of paper you've got hanging up on the wall. It's about time you got out of academia and had a look at the real world. That's what I say. So there you go. Look at this. He's got a PhD in political science, yet without getting on the ground and truly seeking to understand, he's just throwing these terms, far-right nationalists. What an absolute disgrace. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Put your thoughts in the comments, but this just goes to show you the type of people that are using their platforms to just kind of, espouse their worldview. They don't really have to base their opinions off anything substantial. So, yeah, so that's basically it for this segment of the show. Now, I've got a bit of advice to these people in the mainstream media. Take it or leave it. I really don't care at this stage, but here we go. We've got 3 tips here. So tip number 1, kicking people when they're down for the sake of accumulating views is cowardly and dishonorable. Okay, in my opinion, that's just a fact. Maybe you agree with me at home, maybe you don't too. Ridiculing civilians who don't have means of fighting back is also cowardly and dishonorable. It takes no courage to pick on people who have lost their livelihoods. It takes no courage to pick on people who you know most likely won't sue you for defamation. How about developing a bit of a backbone and going after some politicians? All right, 3. Stop hiding behind the corporation you work for. Show some guts, and instead of slandering civilians, try challenging the government on topics that matter, such as the true infection fatality rate of the Delta strain. Okay, how about that? How about you press Brett Sutton or Martin Foley or whoever else is working in the Victorian executive in relation to that particular metric? You won't, because you're complicit and you work tightly with the government, and it's a special club and you're in it and the rest of society are not. So, I mean, it's just absolutely disgusting, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen, using their platform to espouse this sort of language. I mean, you look at this guy right here, Jack Payne, using this derogatory terms, anti-vaxxer, reality TV wannabe. I mean, I'm kind of thinking to myself, if Monica and I are walking down the street and Jack's on the other side of the road, is he going to walk over to us and use the same type of language that he used in those articles, or will he keep walking? What do you think? Do you reckon he'll come up and say, hey, you're an anti-this and you're a wannabe this and that, or do you think that he'll just sort of walk the other way and hope that we don't... Oh, I can't even say this with a straight face. Of course we know what he would do.